U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith with us. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good this morning, Paul. Thank you for asking.
Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can hear you very well.
Good. Man, I don't know with this short segment here, but let's just get into a couple of things here because, first of all, have you seen anything that this administration's done requesting the help for either House or Senate in getting gas prices to come down? Anything at all?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you talk about falling on deaf ears. It is truly falling on deaf ears. It doesn't matter what American production policies you want to come up with. Mm-hmm. They're not going to listen. And, of course, we know what that continues to do to Mississippi and this country. But not many of us have been asked to come down to the White House to even voice our opinions, ideas, our policy. They're controlling everything. And they are going to, the day that Joe Biden put his hand on that Bible and was sworn in, that's when it started. And, way before Putin ever invaded Ukraine, which is what they're wanting to blame it on. And yesterday, as I was coming from the Capitol back to my apartment, just right down the street, the gasoline on the sign, the Supreme was $6.29 here.
Unbelievable.
So it's not like it is not right in their face. But they're certainly not willing to listen at all. And, when they begin shutting off the American oil and gas production, that's just when it started. And then to blame everyone else but us game started. But, American people know what's going on.
The art of disinformation is very, very difficult unless you have places to disseminate that. And they do. They have it in the mainstream media. Perfect example of that. And we see it all the time when you start looking at it and you understand what's going on. But a perfect example of that is when the president the other day canceled some of these leases. And, of course, the mainstream media came up and said, well, those are leases nobody really wanted. And then you start digging into that. And, first of all, why the hell in this atmosphere, this environment, would the president do something so negative to his popularity, which is already in the minus column, to cancel more of that acreage off? And he wouldn't have done that, but he did it for a reason, and he canceled them. And then the oil companies come back and said, well, wait a minute, take a look at this. The reason we didn't want some of that land, you've made it too difficult and non-productive for us to even go out there and wildcat. But that's the art of disinformation.
Yes, and you have to have those permits. And, when they're canceling, they canceled 3 last week, Paul. 2 in the Gulf of Mexico, 1 in Alaska. Now, Lisa Murkowski and I will be joining her on a press conference. I believe it's tomorrow around noon on this. But, they're not even following the law. The Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, it requires the Interior Department to hold regular lease sales for, the domestic energy production and to stabilize the market. So they're not even following federal law because it requires them to do that. So, not only are they breaking the law, but they're listening, I guess, Paul, to just the environmental radicals.
I have no idea, or trying to just collapse this country, because if they're not, they're doing a great job of doing that. But let me ask you, is that going to be challenged in court? His cancellation?
But, I really don't have a lot of information on that, whether there would be a court challenge or not. It needs to be. And, hopefully that it will be. But there's so many federal laws that they're breaking every day that, they're in control. They're in control of the White House. They're in control of the U.S. Attorney General's office. They're totally in control. And we're just pretty sick of just the answers that are so flimsy. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve, are we going to go there? And we've just got to hang on until things can change. But I assure you, the ones in control right now, and it has to be intentional. No one is that mentally limited. It has to be intentional. And excuses are just running out.
They have a little bit of this dictator mentality, too, because playing off what you said a few moments ago, the president actually said that. He said, we are in control because we can do this. We're in control of all three branches of government. And then he said the executive branch, the House, and the Senate. And nobody challenged him on that. Three branches of government are not House, Senate, and the White House. You freaking idiot. I scream sometimes. I wonder I've got the hair I've got left. But nobody challenges this guy at all. Let me turn over to the Ukrainian situation, because where does that stand as far as the $40 billion in aid, the additional aid that Rand Paul stood up and said, wait a minute, let's don't do this. But where is that now? Has that been voted in, or is the vote coming up?
It has not been voted in yet. We voted on cloture. Mm-hmm. But, I have been very verbal about America's commitment to help Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And, and our NATO allies, because today they're in Ukraine. Where is Putin going to be next month? And if he goes into the NATO countries, that puts us there. But the one thing, it's incredible how the Ukrainians have, they've been proven that they can fight back. But they've got to have more weapons. They've got to have more ammunition. They've got to have more fuel. But no one wants to go beyond what is reasonable, what is prudent, what this country can afford as far as a bill to help them. But, I personally feel that we've got to help them defeat Putin.
Yeah.
And
I think every member of the Senate feels the same way, except Ron Paul at this time. Here's some questions I have. Mitch McConnell is.
Yeah, you've got to be responsible. And I just want to get this in. John Kennedy, our partner over there, neighbor in Louisiana, he has an amendment, and it's to create a special inspector general for Ukraine. And, they will obviously, their job would be to make sure that these billions are spent properly, because no one will ever forget what happened in Afghanistan and how irresponsible that was. Now, I don't know how many supporters you're going to get if you don't have amendments in there to make it responsible of how the money is spent. And I think the money is very much abundant for that cause. It's the price tag's a little high for me, to be honest with you, but we're going to have to help them, but only if there's something in there that will make sure the money is being spent appropriately.
Well, everybody's amazed at how long they have held off on this as far as the Russians are concerned. And I mentioned this more than once. When you had that delegation of Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff go over, then you had the First Lady go over, which is amazing. It's almost like spring vacation in Ukraine. Now Mitch McConnell's going to go over and visit. They're visiting with the president. So apparently people know where he is. And then on the other side, you've got the Russian army coming through, like Sherman. So I don't understand if there's that much of security in the city of Kyiv, or how do we know where the money is going to go? The other part of that is, where do we know, as you said, if Russia makes some success stories in a couple of those cities and they come back, throw a couple of nukes, who gets the money? Is that $40 billion, and the rest go back to the Russians?
Yeah, that's a good question, and something that it's yet to be played out. But if they get into the NATO countries, we know we're going to have to have some financial, support there, and we need to stop him now.
Well, I do understand that Mr. Putin is not real happy with the Finland. Because Finland yesterday made some overtures. Finland President Sauli Niinisto told Russian President Vladimir Putin in a phone call this last weekend that the country plans to apply for NATO membership in the next few days, and he was not happy about that. We will talk more with the U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith upon return. Hang on. Back to Cindy Hyde-Smith, U.S. Senator, and we were talking about a sundry of different things. We were talking about Ukraine, and we were also talking about Finland and NATO. And I think a lot of people in the state of Mississippi may be weakening on the resolve to keep putting more and more money in the Ukraine, especially with the border situation as it is and everything else. But I understand what your commitment, when you say your commitment, the commitment is there, but we don't know when that vote's coming up.
We've probably got 2 more votes before the final vote. So we're going to, try to get the amendments in there. And, I just think generally everybody wants to help Ukraine. It is just at what cost that, we've still got to make rational decisions for our own country, for sure.
And we'll talk to Michael Guest is coming in a little bit later on, but it's frustrating, but it's not the first time we've seen this, of course. Whenever there's a power change in Washington, D.C., it's that way. When the Republicans are in power, it's that way for the Democrats and vice versa. But you're just, when you don't have the House, when you don't have the Senate, you don't have the White House, you're biding by your time. You're just trying to wait it, and you're aggravated, but there's very little you can do. You vote on the bills you can vote on.
That's exactly right. And, the thing, talk about aggravation, add our inflation on top of that. And what's going on with the economy here and this country, it's just never been like this before. I mean, just the consumer price index just this past month in April was the highest it's ever been in 40 years. It shot up 8.3%, but it is just amazing that, we're looking at these numbers, the highest in a lot of them that, work in D.C., just say it's the highest in my lifetime. But the producer's price index up 11%. Anything you go to the grocery store and buy, it is costing so much more. And, Americans are hurting. And we are feeling this, and the Democrats continue the conversation of more tax hikes, more spending.
Yeah.
And, it's just, it is unbelievable that the worst thing we can do is add on to the trillions of dollars we've already spent on Biden's wasteful spending spree to look at the Ukraine situation. So it is a very tough spot, but we're not in the majority at all anyway, so we're going to have to make it less bad, hopefully with the amendments that get in, that the money is spent wisely. And, I really think a lot of us we're not going to be able to vote for it if we don't have those amendments in there and the safeguards that at least it will be audited.
The baby formula crisis is another one of the things that the president didn't see coming, was partly responsible in several different ways. My understanding is that his team could have probably forced them, or at least help one way or other, to get this thing checked out, cleared, back certified, whatever it is, this factory, and get them back on board, and it's taken too long to do that. But we had a story this morning that 2 kids in the Mid-South are on IV now at hospitals in Memphis because they have this condition where they have to have that specific type of formula, and the parents went out and tried something else because that was all they could get, and it was a negative thing to the kids, and they wound up in the hospital.
So unfortunate. And, any administration, the Biden administration, whoever's in the White House, should have seen this as soon as Abbott was shut down. And, how do you get too busy not to address this? That there's no reason why this should not have been addressed, because now we are in the total crisis and complicated by so many other things. Even if production is stepped up, we still have I guess you want to refer to it as the supply chain challenges, what it costs to get it there.
Yeah.
It was just such lagging behind when the initial incident came about and happened. That's when you react. You can't have sluggish reactions to getting formulas and the production back online. You just can't do that. It's just still incredibly frustrating and hurtful to families and injuring these babies because, they're desperately trying to find the safe formula. And, they have every right to be upset. But the White House should have never lagged behind on something this critical. And I don't care who's in the White House. That was not handled properly. But the administration, when they shut down when the Abbott lab was shut down, should have stepped up immediately. And, I just know that even if Abbott ramped up production today, it would still be, what they're telling us, Paul, is about 6 to 8 weeks before more formula stacks the shelves to the amount that is needed.
Well, there's several things to look at. First of all, does Abbott have all of the government contracts? Are they the big dog? Is that suppressing other people from coming into the business? There's a multitude of different things that need to be taken care of or looked at, and also those contracts. But it reminds me of old Bull Cephas and A Country Boy Can't Survive. I don't think so anymore, because it worries me how dependent we've become since you and I were in the boomer generation, and we never had any formula. And apparently we lived, but now that's unheard of making our own formula. We're scared to make our own formula. It's just a whole different world out there.
And you have so many special conditions of sensitive situations for infants that I'm sure in our time were treated, but maybe treated differently. And it seems to be pretty common right now. Mm-hmm. And, I'm glad that science has come, that we can come up with the formulas to address those sensitive issues. But, you've got to have production, and you've got to have really good management and wise decisions when a crisis occurs.
The abortion vote taken by the Democrats was, again, and I think I tweeted out, if you want to see what good and evil looks like on both sides of the spectrum, this is it. The Democrats out there fighting like hell to be able to kill babies in the womb. And that vote was I don't know. It was as remarkable to me as when they had that convention that time and they denied faith in God in the platform 3 times. It was absolutely incredible.
It is. Sitting on that Senate floor, looking across the aisle at my Democratic colleagues, arguing the point to justify this, totally unbelievable. And gender selection, we want abortions based on gender selection. Mm-hmm. When we have the gender issue now that is so out of line with most Americans anyway, of the decisions being made, right to the point of birth. And it's unbelievable we live in the time that we live in, that can happen. And then taking away the exemptions from physicians, the OBGYNs, that they can't even have a religious exemption from not performing this. It could not have been any more radical. Yeah. We're just sitting there. It cannot have been any more radical. And, of course, they're spinning off the leak of Justice Alito's draft opinion. And, they're wanting to build that up. They want to change the conversation. And but just the leak itself tells you about the erosion that is in this city, the tactics that we're seeing today by pro-abortion protesters, and even targeting the justice's home. That is illegal. Yep. And the intimidation, and this is going to get worse, Paul. And, it's a Mississippi case, which I'm so very proud of, that the opinion is based on. Mm-hmm. And, the justices have to be free to do their jobs, and they're going to, target us as Mississippians, there's no doubt. But, I was encouraged by the draft opinion. I was thrilled, and I hope the final decision, continues to retain that, that they do overturn Roe versus Wade. But the lies that are being told that, it completely eliminates everything instead of the truth, that it goes back to the states and abortion law should be debated and decided by American people.
They've stretched that about as far as they possibly could. Look, it's always good talking to you, ma'am. I appreciate it. I know you got a busy day, and we thank you for joining us. Cindy Hyde-Smith, U.S. Senator. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good to talk to folks from Mississippi.